Thank you very much.
You're at number 38 now?
Yes, it's that time of year again. Leaflets are piling up on your doormat.
So are you excited about the election?
Tranquil evenings are being disturbed by canvassers as candidates pledge to act as your champion.
Is it okay if I leave a leaflet with you so you can have more information about our candidates?
Thank you very much.
It all has a familiar feel. The sun is at last shining, the days are lengthening, so it must be spring polling time. But is something afoot in the year when all of London goes to the polls? Across England, the two main parties are even Stevens, but in the capital city, Labour is hoping to make gains after its success in last year's general election. So is London now its own unique electoral ecosystem?
Labour has a number of advantages in London. It includes the fact that lots of groups, obviously the young, are disproportionately represented here. Significant number of minority ethnic voters. They also tend more than the average to vote Labour. And if you add to that a sense that lots of younger people, even those who are quite well off, can't get on the housing ladder, feel disgruntled by that and perhaps by austerity, all of these are conditions that are rather good for Labour in London. But it is worth remembering that in the rest of the country, the reverse might be true. So London is a sort of almost like an island, a political island now.
Back in the 1960s, when the first elections took place under the current system of London councils, there was a predictable pattern. A two-horse race, one up one year, one down the other. And then signs of a London donut, redder in the middle, bluer in the outer ring. Inner city voters, strongly dependent on social housing, leaned towards Labour, whilst homeowners in outer London Metroland leaned towards the Tories. As the decades went by, yellow also arrived on the scene. But in recent years the donut has evolved. Labour has nibbled into the outer ring of the donut as younger and BAME voters move into the suburbs. And now Labour has its sights on expanding its hold on the outer donut, and it also hopes to strengthen its position on the centre by turning the blue strongholds of Wandsworth and Westminster to red. In the years when she bestrode the land, Margaret Thatcher hailed Wandsworth as a Tory beacon for the way it pioneered the outsourcing of services and set ultra-low local tax. So could the jewel in Margaret Thatcher's crown be on the verge of falling into Labour hands?
This is what we're up against. We're up against the council, which was Margaret Thatcher's favourite council for a reason. This was the testing ground of Thatcherism. The sorts of policies they rolled out here, they rolled out across the country. And this has been the Tory citadel now for 4 decades. If we take Wandsworth, it will send shockwaves through the entire Conservative Party machine.
It's a Saturday morning and supporters of Momentum, a group set up to defend Jeremy Corbyn's leadership of the Labour Party, are preparing to take their message door to door. Veterans and younger activists are talking of change.
I actually canvassed here for the first time on June the 8th last year. I kind of was listening to Jeremy Corbyn and really getting into him and understanding things that he was fighting for were things that mattered to me and my friends and my family. And I kind of decided on June the 8th that I couldn't complain if I didn't do anything and I couldn't celebrate if I didn't do anything. So I came to Battersea.
Welcome to Wandsworth.
It's not always been such a happy story for Labour in Wandsworth, after Momentum activists were recorded calling for the removal of the party's group leader on the council.
I just wanted to say a quick thank you to Owen Jones because he's been an incredible friend to this campaign.
For now, all is sweetness and light, at least in public.
Cool, everyone get door knocking!
But Momentum has a warning for those who may not have bought into the new leadership.
You join any club and you support the policy of the club, you know, you don't join the cricket club because you want to play football. So assuming that all of the Labour candidates are backing the Labour Party policy on housing, on education, on local services, on restoring dignity to local government, which has been emasculated under the Tories, I'm sure all Labour candidates will be behind that, and we'll be right behind them.
In private, senior Labour figures believe that winning a borough famous for low council tax is a formidable challenge. But the man running the local Conservative campaign admits his party is facing a tough fight. This time Labour really is breathing down your neck.
Yeah, I think we've got a real fight in our hands here. It's going to mean that every Tory voter has to go out and vote, and that's what we're putting across on the doorstep, that this is probably the most important election Wandsworth has had since we took control in 1978.
Okay, madam, lower council tax.
On a weekday morning, the Conservative Minister for London is working hard, and Joe Johnson is hammering home his party's record on low council tax.
We're getting the message out that if you want high quality local authority services delivered at low council taxes, you've got to vote Conservative on May the 3rd. If you look at Wandsworth, the average Band D council tax is about £700. Over the road in neighbouring Lambeth, Labour-run Lambeth, it's almost twice that much, and the quality of services is simply not as good here over there either.
So the Tories hope that an election-winning formula that has worked over 4 decades will rebuff the Labour challenge.
If Labour wants to sweep along the River Thames with the Corbyn revolution capturing councils that eluded the party even in the electorally successful years of Tony Blair, then winning Wandsworth is an important goal.
And Labour's ambitions don't stop there.
Jeremy Corbyn is looking across the river. He has his eyes set on Westminster City Council, which has never been in Labour hands since its creation in its present form in the 1960s. Party insiders acknowledge that would be a tall order, but victory here would mean that the land around the Palace of Westminster would turn red.
To win this once mighty Tory bastion, some unlikely places would have to turn red. Leafy, picturesque Little Venice is one such ward within the city of Westminster that Labour would need to win. And the changes here tell a bigger story about London.
Everything is more fluid now, so it's true. Everybody who lived in these houses in the past, almost without exception, the odd eccentric might have not done so, would have voted Conservative as they saw it in their own interest, and people over there in the tower blocks would have voted Labour similarly, though for different reasons. These days there'll be plenty of people who live over in the tower blocks who think, well, actually, perhaps the Conservatives, Theresa May, better bet for me, actually, I rather support their more conservative nature. Whereas there are plenty of progressives and sort of affluent people who live here who think, well, we are generally in favour of a change to society, so, this is our kind of party these days. We live in complicated and fluid times.
If London is turning into a modern city-state, set apart from the rest of the country, then what of Remain supporters? Just over 60% of Londoners voted to stay in the EU, possibly providing pickings for the most unequivocally pro-EU of the main parties.
I think since the referendum, to be honest, I'm a EU citizen and I didn't get a chance to vote, unfortunately. And I got very frustrated with the result, obviously. I've been here close to 30 years, married to a Brit, and it's been really frustrating to feel like from one day to the next, suddenly I was a guest. I was no longer a member of the community. I had to justify my presence, or it felt that way anyway.
For Vince Cable, Brexit is a mixed blessing. The party fears it may lose seats in Leave-voting Sutton, but it has high hopes of challenging the Tories in the Remain strongholds of Kingston and Richmond.
Some people are looking at the bigger picture. Brexit is an issue for some people. A lot of European nationals are allowed to vote in these elections who can't vote in general elections or referendums, and I think that's a significant factor in some areas.
Okay, we're going to go in here.
The Tories Minister for London, a passionate Remain supporter in his divided family, thinks talk of a continuing Remain roar in London is overblown.
There are angry Remainers in this city, aren't there?
As a supporter.
There's a support. There are angry Remainers in this city, and they're punishing your party, aren't they?
Remain, Leave. Residents want high quality services, low council taxes, and that's what a local authority that's run by a Conservative administration is going to bring them, and that's what they're voting about on May the 3rd.
The Conservatives might be sticking resolutely to local issues, but there's another party that sees the unique challenges facing London as fertile territory for their agenda.
I think we appeal to London voters because we listen to them, we put their concerns at the top of the agenda, and we're leading the way on the key issues that face people in London. So whether that's issues of air pollution here in Camden, whether it's the issue of housing demolitions in Lambeth, it's the Greens that are standing up for local residents, it's the Greens who are setting the agenda.
Voters on both sides of this river will create the news on polling day, when attention is focused on London. But the question will be, will that tell us a story about the country as a whole, or will it tell us that London is a place apart?